All right, guys, just want to welcome back to the Gridiron Gurus podcast. Today, I'll be reviewing three free agents that the Atlanta Falcons should be targeting this off-season. Diving right into things. Starting with number one, wide receiver is going to be a big need for this football team. This is a very deep draft in April when it comes to pass catchers, so I think you could definitely see them adding a couple of guys to a group that definitely just needs to boost its talent overall. But there's a lot to sort out here because you have Kyle Pitts, who's a free agent, Darnell Mooney, a guy who's coming off a vastly disappointing season right now, is slated to have an $18 million cap hit. Now they can free up about $12 million with a post-June 1st cut. So I would imagine that's potentially into his future, meaning they can go out and splurge a little bit, I think, at the pass-catching position. And I think Wan'Dale Robinson would be a great way to complement Drake London. He's one of the top receivers in the NFL. Of course, London has just been tremendous so far. Only was able to play about 12 games this past year, less than 1,000 yards, but when he was on the field, he was one of the top difference makers in the entire division. So London, he just needs some complimentary help, and I think adding a slot weapon in Wan'Dale Robinson is a great way to go about doing things moving forward for Michael Penix, because this is, again, a receiving group that just does not have a whole lot of talent. You can bring in Wan'Dale, who's coming off two great seasons, 90-plus receptions. He's been a good possession pass catcher, 70+% reception percentage, meaning he's catching 70% of his targets in 4 straight years now. So this is a guy who's been a reliable target, coming off his best career season of 1,000+ yards. Only had 3 drops as well. So he really improved in really all categories. And throwing him into the slot would be tremendous because London's going to be able to cook out wide. You have a guy in Robinson that can be a quick, shifty difference maker when it comes to getting out the ball out in a hurry, picking up some good yards after catch. He's also a deep threat with some really good speed. I think Wan'Dale Robinson's one of the more underrated pass catchers in the entire NFL, so I think he can help you out in a variety of different ways, because right now it's London having to come down with a lot of tough hands catches. He's then the red zone target for them as well, and Wan'Dale can go out there and be a potential gadget player for this offense, giving them some more speed. And again, I definitely anticipate them adding a receiver or two in the NFL draft because there's lots to go around. It's, an ungodly deep draft at the position. So I think this is a great opportunity for the Falcons this offseason. It's currently sitting on about $28 million in cap space available to go out and get some new pass catchers. This group is badly in need of help. David Sills, he made some good plays for him at times. Kadero Hodge as well throughout his career has been respectable, but there's just not a whole lot here, especially if they're going to lose their top tight end. We'll see what happens in that realm. But even if Pitts comes back, we still need to go out there and bolster this receiving group. And I think this is a contract that's very doable. $17 million per season over 3 years, I think, is a good, fair deal for him, and he's definitely earned it. And I think, with all the limitations the Giants have had at quarterback, his production's been pretty staggering for that offense. Of course, Penix hasn't been perfect either, right? He's still a young guy who's shown flashes of being able to, be a high productive passer in this league, and I think Robinson's another step in that direction. So I think pairing him up with Drake London, you get you a nice slot option. It's going to be reliable. Hopefully he doesn't have a Darnell Mooney type fall off where this past season he just was not very good for them. They're going to have to probably find something else when it comes to a slot receiver. Mooney just had not a great target reception percentage, that is. Had a lot of drops as well, was not able to be that big-time playmaker that we're accustomed to seeing. So moving on from Mooney, replacing him with Wan'Dale Robinson's a good way to start this offseason. Moving to number two, the Falcons always struggled with their run defense. This is a group 24th in the NFL in run defense. Of course, they also have a big-ticket free agent on this defensive line in David Onyemata. Obviously, that's something they're going to have to figure out as well, and he's probably going to get a big money contract. But even if he returns or even if he departs, they still need to give this defensive line attention, especially with James Pierce and his pending legal situation. Kind of a gloomy outlook there. So that's one less difference maker that this team's going to have. You can't afford to lose, your top 2 edges in the same offseason. So Onyemata is definitely going to dictate a lot. He's been a phenomenal run defender for this team, but with their weaknesses still in that area, they're going to have to go to free agency, maybe even in the draft. I think you can get things started with Roy Lopez from the Detroit Lions. 6'2", 318 pounds, coming off his fifth year in the league, and it was by far his best one. It was really consistent against the run, being able to showcase some strength. He's always been a bit of a consistent pass rusher from the interior. He was able to rip off a career-high 3 sacks this past season. The 8 hurries was the second lowest in his career, though, in a single season, so definitely something to be wary of. But he was able to corral the passer on numerous occasions this year, but I really thought he was a standout run defender for the Lions. That was a team that also needed some help on their defensive line, and Lopez was a guy that was able to step up for them. So him being a free agent, I think this is going to definitely help out this interior. He can be a nice rotational player, get you about 400 to 500 quality snaps per season. Doesn't fix all the problems by any means, but they definitely need to renovate this group. And again, the things we talked about this offseason with some of their top players up front, they're definitely going to have to give even larger attention to it in 2026. I think, he can be a nice rotational run stopper. The consistency overall has improved. At least that's what you saw this past year, and you're hoping he can build upon that. So I think a fair 2-year, $14 million deal is a good way to get things started. It's not going to cost you a whole lot. Maybe it's a bit of an overpay, but I think this is a guy that still has a lot of upside as a younger cat coming off his best season. A guy that was a 6th-round pick of the Houston Texans out of Arizona many years back. He's always been able to stay on the field. He's been healthy for the most part in his career, and I think he's been a reliable player. He's not the best tackler in the box, definitely misses a lot of those, and that's one area he's definitely going to have to improve on. When it comes to overall ability to shed and showcase some strength on the interior, this is something that the Falcons are going to have to need, and Willie Lopez is definitely going to be a good way to upgrade things. So I think this is a good player to bring in. The defensive tackle class isn't all that great. There's a lot of veterans on the table. Calais Campbell maybe. Sheldon Rankins is out there as well. Onyemata, I think, is a guy they need to re-sign. And then if they can add Lopez in there as well, I think that's a quality way to start the offseason. I think you'll be able to draft somebody as well to start to get the ball rolling on improving that run defense. Moving to number 3, the Falcons should target a cornerback in Jalen Watson. Now, there is some pretty respectable free agents in this class when it comes to the cornerback position, but I think Jalen Watson's probably going to be the best fit. Cornerback was a position of weakness really last year for the Falcons. A.J. Terrell played some good football, but for the most part, he was just less than stellar and wasn't as quality as we're accustomed to seeing in the past. And the rest of this group's just not all that talented. Mike Hughes, a former first-round pick. I think you already have seen what his play is going to look like, and it's kind of capped out, I think, at this point. D. Alford, he played some outside corner. He played a lot of slot as well, and he was just awful for them. So this is a cornerback room that they're going to look to try and find some new bodies because they didn't have a whole lot of different guys out there. Last year, C.J. Henderson was on roster. Kobe Bryant as well. Played a couple of games. The rookie out of Kansas wasn't all that good in about 100 reps in the late half of the year. So this is a group that's also kind of in turmoil. I think Terrell is still a guy you can count on to be a game changer here in Jeff Ulbricht's defense, that is. And I think if you can go out there and go get a guy like Watson, who has been a very consistent man coverage corner, this is a defense that was a lot more aggressive throughout the season with a lot of man being played. Seems like he's going to be the ideal fit. This is a guy that's got size as well. I mean, he's been able to come into this league out of Washington State as a 7th-round pick, and he's played his way into a very respectable payday. 6'2", 200 pounds, $45 million, I think, is what he's eyeing over a 3-year deal. Maybe he can go even a little bit more long-term on that as well. But I think Watson has definitely earned himself a starting role somewhere in the NFL. He obviously proved it this past season, almost 900 reps for Kansas City. He was always a good rotational corner, but his plays just continued to improve as his careers went on. His 4th season was his best one. He was also a very stout run defender. He was really good in that regard. He was a very efficient tackler. Only 4 missed stops on the entire year. So you're seeing a player that's coming off 2 really good seasons in coverage as well. And you're seeing the rest of his game really start to catch up as a complete football player. So I think this is a very respectable defender that the Falcons should look to bring in. Again, I think he's a good fit. I like the size. I like the quality play. I think he's really checked out a lot of those boxes. I think this is something that's very desirable for the Falcons, considering the cornerback position's another one of those top needs for them. So I think with this episode, you see them being able to go out there and not have to really break the bank. I wouldn't think too much. Maybe you can consider $17 million per year on Robinson breaking it, but I don't think so. I think these guys are all fair valued. If you have to get into a bit of a bidding war, though, that can be maybe a problem for Atlanta, because I don't know if that's something they would look to want to do. But I think this would be a great way to start the offseason. They go out and get 3 guys that are going to fill some needs for this football team. They can turn their attention to the draft and they can kind of breathe a little bit because those are some quality football players. They're going to be day one impact players for them in all regards. So I think Jalen Watson at corner would be a great way to cap things off. I think Roy Lopez being an underrated player at D tackle would help bolster that room. And then Robinson, I think, would just be a phenomenal fit for this offense. To cap things off, though, we have an honorable mention. David Njoku at tight end. We talked about Kyle Pitts at the top of the show being a free agent. What's going to happen with him? I think it's probably better just to pay him compared to maybe opting to go get a player like David Njoku. But Kevin Stefanski, this is a guy that was with Njoku for 6 years in Cleveland. Harold Fanning came in this year as a rookie, and as the season went on, he really started to get a lot of those targets, and deservedly so. He was one of the top rookies in the NFL this past season. So Njoku's time has come to an end with Cleveland. It appears he's moving on, and this is a guy that had some really good seasons for the Browns. His best being back in 2023, had 88 receptions for 975 yards and 6 scores. In 24, had about 500 yards and 5 more scores. And this past season was pretty disappointing in terms of really being that downfield option. He was really a check down for him, less than 300 yards on 33 receptions, but he was still utilized in the offense a good bit, at least early on in the season. You're really seeing him have some meaningful production. This is a guy that was able to rip off numerous 30-yard games in the first half of the year, battled an injury or two, and just kind of fell to the back of the rotation in favor of Fannin. So I think Njoku's still a guy at 29 years old, can be a respectable contributor. He's been consistent throughout his entire career. The relations with Stefanski, I think, is definitely something that's looming for this football team. So we'll see what happens with Pitts, but if they're going to let him walk, I think this is the perfect replacement, about $10 million per year, maybe over a 2 or 3 year deal for him. Maybe they look to the draft to pick up somebody younger as well, but there's no one that's really going to be a difference maker. I think that they want to target early on in April's draft, so I think they're going to look to stay with a veteran, and I think Njoku would be a perfect replacement if they're going to opt to let Pitts walk, so that's why he's going to be an honorable mention, and he didn't make it 1 through 3, because I'm not exactly sure what circumstances we're going to be staring down, so I think that this is a very good list for Atlanta. 4 players here that would make a lot of sense for them in all regards. That's going to be it for today's episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.